This is a quick response to Gary on the explaining the difficulties of the universe in 15 minutes. I'm going to see if I can do it in 5. No, I'm not really. I'll try and keep this response short though. I haven't responded to your most recent couple of videos, Gary. I don't know why. I've been talking to myself mostly, I suppose. And I also got the feeling that we're probably in agreement about most stuff, so it didn't seem like it was going to be very interesting. Or if we weren't in agreement, it seemed to me like the only places that I could go with it was either towards some kind of version of Ayn Rand objectivism, or to, I don't know, some soggy version of Buddhism maybe, or I don't know. I didn't feel any of the places it was going to go to was one that either of us would find very interesting, or that I would have anything interesting to say, I suppose. So, yeah. Anyway, just in relation to your last video, your video in response to, oh God, I can't fucking remember. Something to do with quantum mechanics? Yeah. I've written down here, quantum mechanics, the maths is easy-ish, but the tricky part is knowing what the maths means. Yeah, I don't know what that means exactly. Anyway, I wrote that. Yeah, where life came from. Yeah, you wanted to try and explain where life came from in 15 minutes, or at least that's what you focus on, which is a bit ironic considering you're accusing me of being human-centric. But, you know, I guess my response would be, you know, who cares, really? I mean, if we're interested in... well, I think there's two things going on. One of these things is to do with a fairly bleak and nihilistic view of the value of life in general and human life in particular. And what I was saying in one of my recent videos was that not just human life, which is thinking how you characterize it, but life in the most general sense, you know, the DNA molecule up to us and beyond, is a really tiny slice of the history of what's going on, and it's, you know, it's fascinating and interesting, but it is taking place on this tiny little dust mote in the outer spiral arm of the Milky Way, and you know, it seems like a pretty inconsequential thing to get all het up about, really. So, you know, if life had never happened and if life winked out of existence, it probably wouldn't make a great deal of difference on a cosmological scale. And in a sense, that's the reason why I was talking in the way I was about Richard Feynman and Ken Wilber, about how I sometimes find it quite irritating when people make what I think are cosmological claims for the significance of human life in particular, and life in general, and things like consciousness. You know, the cosmos is huge, cosmos is old, cosmos is, you know, complicated in a different way, the way that life is complicated, and it just seems a bit arrogant to say that, you know, that life is the only game in town, really. From that perspective, in terms of the cosmos, I think there's other reasons why, of course, why we have to talk about life and why we have to talk about human life, and they relate to the morality stuff that we've been kicking around recently. And that's really where my interest lies. I mean, where a distinction I would draw between what you were talking about in terms of my human-centeredness is I don't think I am trying to argue from a human-centered perspective. I'm trying to understand a way of talking which owns up to our own humanness. You know, that all the thinking we do is human, that as you yourself have pointed out, you know, we're constantly bloody revisiting old narratives to do with desire and to do with greed and to do with reproduction and to do with violence. You know, these are the stories that we are running through our bloody veins, really. So I'm interested in trying to find a way to own up to that and take some kind of ownership of it and responsibility for it, but without, you know, saying that it's the only game in town. You know, so I'm trying to balance those two things off, and you know, I don't think I'm doing particularly well at it, but that's certainly my ambition. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say, really. Yeah, I mean, you do talk about a lot of other things, Gary, which maybe I'll come back to at a different point. You talk about some kind of science fiction films. There's a great film called Things to Come, actually. It's available for a free download on the internet. It's an old Alexander Korda film. Brilliant. It's got this great scene at the end, Things to Come, based on the H.G. Wells story. It's got this great scene at the end where these two scientists, I guess they are, just looking out into space, And it's this speech about, you know, what's going to happen to us, what's going to happen to us. Are we just going to be like little animals, or are we going to go out into the stars? You know, everything or nothing. It's just brilliant. I don't really know how that relates to what we're talking about. Overpopulation, yeah, that's a concern. I don't think the voucher scheme would work. I think you just end up with, well, the equivalent of carbon trading, but with kind of genomes instead, and that's a bit of a, it's just, you know, that's a really, you're opening the doors for all kind of corruption there, I think. I think you'd have to substitute something else. I think if you wanted somebody to give up, I mean, I've got kids myself, and so I can't really say anything about that, you know, really. But I think if you wanted people to stop having children, you have to give them something else instead. And I think, to be honest, if you sold it right, people would do it, because I've brought up children, and I know what a pain in the arse it is sometimes. And if there was a substitute which allowed you to, you know, to have some of the same kind of satisfactions in terms of, you know, feeling that you're projecting your DNA into the future, then I'd certainly take it. And I think from a female perspective, anything that substitutes for having to effectively, you know, squeeze a melon between your legs, it's got to be a good idea, hasn't it? So some kind of complicated Pokemon maybe, or some, you know, what do they call them, those, I don't know, those little electronic things. I mean, maybe there's some kind of device that you can invent that takes it away, or just some kind of reinventing of what kind of responsibility we should have to each other, that might substitute for the parenting instinct. Oh no, maybe we should just wipe everybody out. I think that's as good a solution as any. Anyway, thanks very much as always, Gary, for your thoughtful video.